Good morning, Professor Locke. Today we are presenting on the Incident of Morales case study. Introduction to Incident of Morales. Incident of Morales, developed by the National Institute for Engineering Ethics, is a case study that focuses on the engineering ethics of licensed professional engineers and highlights the numerous challenges that they face in the profession. The purpose of this presentation is to raise awareness of ethical aspects of professional work, learn about professional standards, develop skills in moral reasoning and strengthen personal dedication to exemplary conduct. This presentation will present Incident at Morales in the perspective of Fred and his journey as their licensed PE at Faust Chemicals. The ethical issues behind every decision that Fred made will also be discussed. Finally, recommendations and how Fred should have better responded ethically were at the end of every ethical issue. NIEE's Statement of Ethics Principles. The privilege of practicing engineering is entrusted to those qualified and who have the responsibility for applying engineering skills, scientific knowledge and ingenuity for the advancement of human welfare and quality of life. Fundamental principles of conduct of engineers include truth, honesty and trustworthiness in their service to society, an honorable and ethical practice showing fairness, courtesy and good faith toward clients, colleagues and others. Engineers take societal, cultural, economic, environmental and safety aspects into consideration, and strive for the efficient use of the world's resources to meet long-term human needs. Summary of the case. These are the following characters and their roles that are of particular interest in this case. Incident at Morales reflects the story of Fred Martinez, an independent professional engineer, PE, whom was hired by Faust Chemicals right after completing the design of a plant for their business competitor, Chemitoil. As a result of strong business competition, Faust Chemicals needed to build a new chemical plant to produce a product, new stripper, that would rival the new incoming product from Chemitoil. As a PE, Fred was the person to design and approve the new chemical plant within a period of only 1 year in Mexico. Fred faced many issues ranging from budget cuts to a tight schedule, and this called into question his professional ethics as a PE on many occasions. The new plant was subsequently commissioned and Faust Chemicals began to produce its new product. However, tragedy struck when the manager of the Mexico plant was killed in a serious accident due to lapses in quality and safety of the factory. Ethical issues and impacts. Facts are presented and reasonable assumptions are made, and they are categorized into the different stages involved to allow for better understanding of the case. There are mainly 4 stages that have been identified: pre-design, design, construction and commissioning. During each stage, ethical issues and its impacts will be brought up. At the end of each ethical issue, the correct decision that should have been taken will also be discussed. Pre-design stage. Possible conflict of interest in hiring Fred. Chemitoil plans to introduce new paint remover led to Faust's decision to develop a competing product. Chuck, the head of engineering at Faust, decided to hire the former Chemitoil design engineer, Fred Martinez, to design the plant. Chuck's actions may be viewed by a third party as an act of poaching, as Fred may be asked for his knowledge on Chemitoil to obtain their secrets to gain an edge over the competition. An unfair advantage by poaching may be gained if there is a leak of secrets, and in this context of plant designs or manufacturing formula. Fred's situation of designing a similar system for a rival company is not a serious ethical issue. Fred has no obligations to Chemitoil from the legal point of view, since he did not sign any non-disclosure agreement. Therefore, he cannot be held liable. However, Fred should instead be more cautious and thoughtful before accepting the job offer by Faust. He could have questioned Faust regarding their motivations behind hiring him as PE despite knowing that he was previously from Chemitoil. Fred should stand firm and inform Faust of his ethics. In the case of both Fred and Chuck, they should avoid conflict of interest by prolonging the period of which he can join the firm of a competitor and accept the licensed PE position. In the case of both Fred and Chuck, they should avoid conflict of interest by prolonging the period of which he can join the firm of a competitor and accept the licensed PE position. Meeting between Faust's different departments. During the meetings between the departments, there was evident tension between the marketing team and the engineers. There were clear signs that the team was dysfunctional as a whole, as the discussions were going nowhere and responsibilities were being pushed around. The team could not agree on any of the suggestions that were brought up, and this resulted in conflict and disagreement. For some possible situations whereby the team is dysfunctional could be disagreement between the leader and the team, where ethical issues brought up for discussion. Here, ethical obligation do not suffer, as ethical issues is the cause of the conflict, as some team members are unethical while others aren't. Wally's one rule to Fred. Engineering decisions involve the understanding of the integration of the systems, which takes time to test in order to ensure the integrity of the system. In a corporate culture that emphasizes speed, shortcuts are more likely to be taken, and thus, risks may not be properly understood. Operations team may be blindsided to the risks involved in running the factory. It is noted that Fred, whom is under the supervision of Wally, is obligated to answer to him. Wally's one rule could have limited Fred's ability in making decisions and do his job, and may in fact lead to situations where potential concerns by Fred may be dismissed regardless of whether the concerns were genuine or not. This may lead to potential safety concerns that endangers lives. Fred should instead convey his concerns to Wally first. Should there be a disagreement or Wally not responding appropriately, Fred may then consider the next course of action by jumping the chain of command and call for a formal meeting with Chuck to resolve the issue. By expressing his concerns firmly, it shows his professionalism and ethics to his superior. Upon fulfilling his own professional ethical code of conduct, Fred would feel more comfortable communicating with Wally and voicing out his concerns appropriately. During the design stage, firstly we will discuss about ethics beyond borders. Professional responsibilities of a PE do not change even when national borders are crossed. Professional engineers are bound by a code of ethics, and they shoulder the responsibility for their work and lives affected by that work. It is an engineer's standard operating procedure and responsibility to adhere all regulations. This goes against the Code of Ethics, which states that all engineers shall hold paramount the safety, health and welfare of the public. Due to the toxic byproducts produced during manufacturing, environmental measures need to be in compliance with the country's environmental regulations. In this case, Faust needed to build evaporation ponds that are lined to prevent spills into the environment. However, it was revealed by Wally that the decision to build the new plant in Mexico was highly motivated by the fact that regulations were loose in the country. It is also possible that Fred may have let the matter pass if his wife had not found out. He admitted that his action of paying little attention to the environment regulations was undesirable. It was only after the emphasis by his wife that Fred then struggled with his conscience and led to him scouring Faust books on ethics. It is highly possible that Fred wanted to create a strong case and bring it up with Wally. Also, due to confidentiality, Fred should not share his concerns with his wife, even if his wife is an employee working in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. EPA. It is similar to the situation of Fred initially joining the company. Fred did not sign any non-disclosure agreement, but being a PE who is bounded by the Code of Ethics, he should have known the limit of sharing confidential issues on his current job. When Wally knew about the meeting that Chuck arranged, he was agitated, and even reprimanded Fred for identifying the environmental issues. Wally's confrontation with Fred about the environmental meeting is justifiable in the context of Fred jumping the chain of command and defying his one rule. However, the condescending tone that Wally put across was indicative that he was only concerned with his own bonus, and it is tied with the ability of him saving costs for the company. The environmental measures were implemented and Fred upheld his ethics. However, while Fred has acted professionally in this case, it meant that the costly measures left him with even less allowance for other critical plant components. Secondly, we will discuss the issues on budget cuts and deadlines. Chuck revealed to Fred that he had to face a 20% cut in the budget. Fred knew the implications that it will have on his design processes was compromised as it was being rushed through without much planning thoughts. In addition, the design team had to make several shortcuts, such as using cheaper alternatives in order to save cost. Fred knew that the equipment he purchased was of sub-quality material. Materials that are not up to standards will reduce the ability of the plant to run smoothly in the long run. He was irresponsible by neglecting the material's integrity and quality despite knowing the requirement of the plant. While Fred was extremely concerned, he should have communicated his safety concerns strongly to Chuck. Chuck and Fred can also put forth a strong case to the French senior executives to highlight the consequences of using sub-quality parts. Fred could have done more research on the equipment and materials that he planned to purchase. If possible, Fred can also seek for advice from specialists and inspectors to have an inspection check on the individual parts used and find possible flaws before the arrival of any consequence during commission and operation. Fred's intentions of pushing responsibility of flanges and couplings as a maintenance issue and operational responsibility was uncalled for and unethical. Lastly, for design stage there is some issues of favoritism. Fred sought to cut costs in the control systems of the plant, and wanted to pick cheaper controls. The cheaper controls are likely to have issues with the range and accuracy. On the other hand, Wally was pushing for the usage of Lutz and Lutz controls as it is affiliated with Chuck's brother-in-law. It is noted, however, that Lutz and Lutz controls could be among the best in the industry as revealed by a visit to Swisegem plant despite a conflict of interest here. To a third party and other suppliers, it indicates favoritism, and this may subsequently lead to Faust possibly losing potential suppliers in the future. There are also ethical issues during the construction stage. The budget for the project did not consider the high cost for environmental protection measures, but since Fred proceeded to implement these measures, the budget for the materials of the plants is further cut, further comprising the safety of using parts that barely meet the standards. A new supplier is chosen to supply the flanges and couplings for the factory, and the inspection of flange and coupling idea was raised up by Fred, whom wants to visit the new supplier. However, Fred was not allowed to make a site inspection on the new supplier due to the lack of time, saying it is inconvenient due to location and is time-consuming. Fred heeded that ill advice and dropped the idea. In such situation, by knowing the importance of inspection, Fred should have mentioned the issues during meetings so that opinions from other team members involved in the project could voice out. The use of substandards flanges and couplings that are unable to withstand cycling processes meant that there was no safety factor applied on the specifications, putting the operators in danger. During the commissioning stage, one of the ethical issues is giving the green light for production despite warning signs. Leakages were observed during test batches, but Fred tried to offer solutions by compromising other factors like manufacturing the paint stripper at a lower temperature and pressure instead of changing the parts to match the requirements. In the end, Fred treated it as an operational issue and not design issue and proceeded to commission the building. Plant commissioning and hand takeover carried on, despite leaks were found during test batches. Leakages found brought forward to operation team, which creates hazards to the following users of the plant. However, the warning sign was not taken seriously by Fred and Wally, and they sought to manage the risks by passing it to the operations team and making it an operational problem. By not involving the operations in the design process, this meant that the genuine safety concerns by the employees on the ground were not taken into consideration. This further implies that the operations team were actually blindsided by the risks of working in the factory. To ensure the integrity and quality of the product or system, inspection should be carried out before operation. However, proper inspection was not done before setting up the plant, and the plant was readily operating. This reflects that risk and safety issues were not identified or eliminated. Always sift out issues during the design stage to avoid issues from propagating down the line as the issues faced will grow further, carrying it into the construction and operational phase. Use of quality products which is of a higher cost that can withstand in the long run, so that the integrity of the plant and safety of the users were properly protected. Secondly, safety was compromised without personal protective equipment. At the Mexico Faust plant, Fred and Wally were at the plant for inspection during trial run without PPE, and it is a highly critical safety issue. During the inspection, no proper safety equipment were worn as they toured the factory without helmets on. They are not putting themselves in the thought of safety. How can they put others' safety into thought? Further adding to the claim that no safety precautions and standards were put in place ethically, to deal with the moral choices, PE should be aware of moral implications so to prevent grave consequences of faulty ethical reasoning. Fred should have judgment on what he needs to be done regardless of what the advice is. So when Jock tells Fred you got to do what you got to do, Fred should know what he ought to do. In conclusion, professional engineers can have a meaningful, impactful and rewarding career by following the ethical codes bound to engineers. The ethical dilemmas that Fred faced is what engineers will face in the course of their work, and these should not affect their judgment in making the right decisions and choices. The obligations of engineers go beyond fulfilling a contract with a client. The code not only adheres to the professional ethics and conduct but in all our daily lives as well.